In this video, we will be taking a look at 30 things you never knew about Resident Evil 8. So with that being said, let's get right into it. Number 1. After obtaining the M1911 fully automatic handgun, it will obtain 2 spots free for extra attachments, improving handling and ammo capacity. When you equip the improved grip on the weapon, you will notice a small golden bee lure on the handgun. This is a direct callback to the puzzle in Resident Evil 1, where Chris or Jill needed the golden bee lure to progress through the mansion. Number 2. In early beta versions of the game, the Old Hag was another witch-like enemy who would chase Ethan around in some locations, and would have somewhat of a stalker type role. In another later version of the game, her character was completely changed, and she was turned into a merchant who would also tell Ethan more about what was going on in the village. These versions of the witch were ultimately scrapped and changed to the Old Hag we ultimately got in the final product. Number 3. Julian, Louisa's nervous son, is voiced by the same voice actor as Lucas in Resident Evil 7.
These people want to let a dying man into our home.
Come now, these people are our friends. Go on, go inside.
Number 4. Resident Evil 8 started development as Resident Evil Revelations 3, possibly sometime around 2017. However, internal testing for the early version of the game received very positive reactions by game testers and others, and since Capcom didn't want a huge time gap between RE7 and 8, it was decided to change into Resident Evil 8. So while development on the third Revelations game was pushed for the future, this original version was given another year of development to completely turn it into what eventually became Resident Evil Village, while the original story plan for Resident Evil 8 was dropped. There actually was a few rumors that talked about how the original game would take place on an island, it would focus on the origins of Mold and Evelyn from the last game, and Ethan and Chris would be the main characters. Number 5. Lady D was once a jazz singer, likely before Mother Miranda implanted her with the Mutamycete. She performed under the stage name of Miss D, and she was also part of a band called the Paul Boys. Number 6. Donna Benevieto's original concept design was labeled as Ghost. This could potentially mean that initially Capcom had plans to take a much more supernatural approach to the game. Number 7. Resident Evil 8 contains one secret death animation that doesn't occur too often. From what I read, this death animation is completely random and has no actual way to trigger it. Number 8. Based on the leaked reports and footage of the game from some work-in-progress beta versions of it, originally the ending was much different. After the scene where Ethan realizes what he really is, and before he wakes up in the Duke's carriage, Ethan had another flashback, remembering him and the real Mia talking happily in their house. Then, after Ethan wakes up, the Duke shows him a medical suitcase containing a dead molded creature, similar to the one which Ethan used to get toxic material to defeat Evelyn in the previous game. Ethan does the same thing again with this creature, and when he confronts Mother Miranda and struggles after Chris shoots her, he injects her with the toxin, which is when Mother Miranda would start losing her power. Number 9. During Ethan's exploration of Donna Benevieto's house, he has many hallucinations from a plant scattered around the house, and in these hallucinations he has to deal with many possessed dolls. This was a reference to the beta version of RE4 called Resident Evil 3.5. In this game, the main protagonist was infected with a virus that caused him to have hallucinations, which caused him to fend off many supernatural enemies like possessed dolls, the Black Fog, and the Hookman. Number 10. While exploring Ethan's house in the beginning of the game, you will find many callbacks and references to older games in the series. Firstly, you can find a bobblehead upstairs, which was the same one from Resident Evil 7. Next, we can find a book written by Joseph Kendo, the brother of Robert Kendo, which was the gun store owner in Raccoon City. And lastly, we can find a book written by George Trevor, which is the person who built the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil 1. Number 11. When exploring the houses in the village, you can find a deceased villager that looks very similar to one of the Bella sisters from Resident Evil 4. Number 12. As you progress through the game, the main menu screen will adapt and change to fit the setting of your current progress. Number 13. The giant baby Ethan faces in Donna's house is a reference to the baby you will find in the cancelled Silent Hill game called Silent Hill PT. Number 14. According to the art director of RE8, Lady D was inspired by a real-life serial killer named Elizabeth Bathory, a Hungarian noblewoman who allegedly tortured and murdered hundreds of women in the early 1600s. According to the legend, Bathory bathed in the blood of her victims because she believed it would rejuvenate her. The puzzle in the game with the 4 statues that has a pool of blood could very well be a reference to Elizabeth. Another inspiration for Lady D was a Japanese internet urban legend called Hashaku-sama, an 8-foot-tall evil spirit with a wide-brimmed hat who attracted young male victims, mimicking the voices of their loved ones. Her third inspiration comes from a villain in the Full Metal Alchemist anime series called Lust. Interestingly enough, both Lady D and Lust were voiced by the same Japanese voice actor. Number 15. In Heisenberg's factory, you come across a room with giant pistons that need to be deactivated. If you leave them going, however, you can bait your enemies into walking right into the trap, killing them and saving your ammunition. Number 16. During the conversation Ethan has with the villagers, Louisa makes a reference to her husband.
They kept coming.
Wait, Louisa, where is your husband?
He doesn't show up later in the game, but that's only because you've probably already met him. If you return to Louisa's house later, you will find the Louisa's heirloom necklace. The treasure hides an important secret, but you might also note that it matches a necklace worn by the first person you encounter when entering the village. The game never really confirmed if the first villager was Louisa's husband, but with this necklace, it really seems like it might be the case. Number 17. Towards the end of the game, when Heisenberg's factory blows up, he makes a remark to Chris. This is a reference to when Chris punches a boulder during the end of RE5 while he and Sheva take on Wesker. Number 18. In Lady D's castle, there are a few hidden dialogue scenes that give us insight into the relationship that Lady D had with her adopted daughters. First up, after defeating Bella, you can hear this.
What have you done to my daughter?
The next hidden line can be found after killing Daniela and then returning to the lobby without being seen.
Cassandra! Come here now! Enough games! I want that man's head! Now go! Of course, Mother.
And finally, after killing all 3 sisters, you can hear Lady D say this.
Oh? The entire bloodline of House Domitresk is done in by the likes of you?
These scenes really bring out Lady D's compassion towards her daughters, and it really shows you how much she cared about them. Number 19. Some files in the Dimitrescu castle state that all the hooded enemies found in the same area, including the ones with wings, were female servants turned into monsters by the Dimitrescu woman. All of the men were drained of blood and killed. These men were then used as scarecrows outside of Lady D's castle. Number 20. The final battle in the ending between Chris's Hound Wolf Squad and all the monsters was originally supposed to include mutated BSAA soldiers who would attack both sides. However, this was later changed further into development. Number 21. If the player never or rarely visits the Duke's store during their playthrough, he will make angry comments about it when they pass by him. Number 22. The scene where Chris lights a cigarette in his car is very similar to the original live-action ending of RE1. Number 23. One of the villagers you meet in Louisa's house is holding a bottle of beer labeled Dulvey Beer. This is a reference to the setting of Resident Evil 7, being located in Dulvey, Louisiana. Number 24. The official height for Lady D is 9 feet 6 inches. Number 25. If you look closely at Angie's face, you can see that it's actually created in the shape of the Benevieto crest, with the moon and sun visible as the two halves. Make sure to check out this video here where I cover the top 10 upcoming survival horror games that you do not want to miss out on.